All right, hi, I'm Steve Saylor, and here is essentially the opening slash settings of Alan Wake 2. I'm doing this basically just to check to see if there's any cold open settings you can adjust before we get into the settings menu. As of right now, I don't think that, at least for accessibility, that there is a screen reader because it's having me to be able to scroll all the way down to the bottom of the end user license agreement, and there is no audio telling me what is actually happening. And there's no feedback on the controller either. So we're just going to scroll past all of these. And all right, we're going to hit A. There is a photosensitivity warning. Okay. That is good because especially in horror games, that can pop up quite a bit, especially, you know, with the jump scares that I know is going to be happening in the game. All right. So you can be able to adjust, looks like SDR and HDR. Individually, or looks like if HDR is enabled, it will automatically go to that, or SDR if you're playing without it. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually increase the game brightness because you know me, dark games they're very hard for me to see. All right, so I like that it's showing you also the HUD as well to kind of check to see the opacity of everything. That's interesting. Okay, I was going to hit A. There we go. Okay, so text language, dialogue language, English. Subtitles are on by default. Love to see that. Let's actually... Okay, so it did basically A just doesn't really do... I thought it might have actually gone into adjusting the subtitle settings, but this is just to turn it on or off. Game mode quality or performance. I'm going to go with performance. Because I know the game looks good, but, you know, I also do like a high frame rate for myself. Curious as to why I don't hear any audio of the game. I'm wondering if that's... Oh, that's okay. That's just the game. Okay, so press A to continue. Here we go. Now I guess there is audio. Okay, so we're gonna go into options. Let's see. We got enable tutorials. Definitely want to have that. We got all of the controller sensitivity adjustments here, which is fine. You can invert controls, vibration strength. Okay, so we can do, there's gameplay assists. So Control actually had some assists, sort of like an assist mode when it came to that game. They added in a little bit later after launch. So I think that this is kind of like a similar sort of situation where they've added these kind of options into here as well for Alan Wake 2. So we got controller aim assist, we got single tap to walk, which is off by default, and quick turn is on by default. So basically, controller aim assist, I like the fact that it's turned on by default, which makes me think it's like, okay, at least that they know that in order to be able to have like at least a decent experience, you know, having auto aim is great, but if you need to be able to adjust that, you can be able to do that. So that's in the gameplay menu. Take a look at controls. I kind of wish that the text size is actually not bad, but I kind of wish it was a little bit bigger because it's harder to be able to see. So if I actually, can you be able to adjust it? You can unbind. Unfortunately, the contrast of the letters inside the buttons are very, very small, or very low. It is hard for me to be able to read the letters inside each of the buttons. So I had to basically lean in close in order to be able to see that unbind is Y. So if I do unbind is Y, and that says unbounds. Okay, so it looks like, press key. Okay, there we go. So it looks like you can be able to rebind controls. But it looks like it doesn't use, well, does it use all the buttons? A, B, X, Y, and the D-pads and the shoulder buttons, as well as the trigger buttons. So yeah, it uses all the buttons on the controller. So it's more like a button swap than necessarily a full rebinding, which that's why a lot of disabled players generally prefer to play on PC, because, you know, using a mouse and keyboard, you have a ton of keys to be able to work with, or a ton of buttons to be able to work with. Whereas controller, you are limited. Sorry, I'm gonna get something right. The controller, you are limited to what you can rebind, because if it uses all the buttons on the controller, you're still having to be able to try to hit every single button that's on the controller. And if you can't reach all of those buttons, it doesn't really help out a huge amount. That's more of a like an issue with complex games nowadays, that like if there's no simplified control scheme, unfortunately every game pretty much uses all the buttons on the controller. So let's go to graphics. We got performance, we got the brightness calibration. We're gonna turn off motion blur, and we're also gonna turn off film grain, because that's a lot for me to be able to try to see. We got audio, we got master volume, sound effects, dialogue volume, bass reduction. We'll be able to turn that off, light or heavy. You can have mono audio. That also helps with deaf and hard of hearing players, because sometimes whenever deaf and hard of hearing players, they may be able to hear out of one ear, or like in left or right, or sometimes a little bit of both. But like having a mono audio mix means that there's nothing going to be in stereo. So that if, say, for instance, if a deaf and hard of hearing player can hear better in their left ear, and if there's something in stereo that's on the right, they wouldn't be able to hear it properly. Whereas mono audio will basically give both audio on both sides of each channel. So that way, for a deaf and hard of hearing player, that's great. So it is good to be able to see that there. What is this? How do you pronounce that? Hyper-Asius filter applies equalizer filter to decrease high-pitched sounds like bird calls, tire screeches, or machinery noises. These filters decrease frequencies above 1 kilohertz. Recommended if you have I have not seen that word in my entire life. I'm assuming that's similar to tinnitus, or high-frequency sound causes discomfort. Let's do with light, because I prefer. Let's just do that. All right, interface. We got we got language, we got subtitles, speaker name and subtitles, yes. Subtitle background, yes. Subtitle size, large. Be good to be able to see an example of that, but that's fine. We've got signage subtitles, yes. That can actually help, because then it basically puts, if there's any like specific signs that are harder to be able to read, based on either lighting or just text or just distance, at least this way that there'll be some actual text, like the in-game font that will come up, and you can be able to read that sign a little bit better. That's good. Dot crosshair, conditional. Show dot when picking up items. This is actually this is sort of like a center dot, so it's good for motion sickness if you want to keep it on all the time, or conditional when show dot when picking up items. Seems like that's kind of that's an interesting. I haven't seen a game use that condition, like you can be able to start it to conditionally or on or off, and that conditional is on by default. So interesting to see how that looks. Hide HUD, no. Hide HUD widgets, no. Hide HUD notifications, no. Nudity sensor, I mean, at least that's good that they had that there. Sure. Okay, but it looks like that is it for the settings of Alan Wake 2. Not a huge, amount of accessibility built in. We'll have to see how the game plays when it comes to accessibility, if there's any design built into the design aspect of the game. But for right now, that is the options for Alan Wake 2. Thanks so much for watching. If you want to be able to see more of my videos, make sure you hit subscribe. Also, help me out, patreon.com/Steve Saylor, to be able to help me do some more accessibility work. All right, take care. Have a good day.